Hey, what's up guys? This is Rob with Fruit of Labor Landscaping, and I am going to be kicking off a new series on our Propagation Station thread on our forum. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through how to propagate one of our native plants, the native firebush, through cuttings. So we're going to do a series. We're going to start from scratch and go all the way until we have good, viable, rooted plants. And the game plan is going to be that I'll take cuttings and we'll put some of them in our hydroponic cloner. We'll take some of them and try and root them directly into potting soil. We'll take some of them and try and root them directly into like a playground sand. And we'll take some, try and root them directly into the ground. So we're going to have a few different methods and ways to do it. So it should be pretty interesting for you guys to kind of see which ones do the best, which ones root the fastest, and any problems that we have along the way we'll talk about in the subsequent videos. So it's going to be really cool. Firebush is a great plant. It's a great Florida native plant, and so we really like trying to propagate it and be able to sell it or sell or give away to people. So or just have more plants in the yard because it's such an awesome plant. So hopefully this will help you guys be able to propagate it as well, and you learn a couple things along the way. This first video is going to be up on our YouTube. After that, we are putting this video series in our paid subscription section of the forum. So when you go over to our website, you'll actually go to our forum, go to the Propagation Station thread, and then it will send you over to the subscription page of our website. So you'll see the prices on there. Basically what we're asking is that you pay at least 1 month of our subscription, which I'm pretty sure last time I checked is less than $10. And it gives you unlimited access to all of the forum topics, the forum threads. You can use and view anything you want to in that month. And if you're not happy with it, or you feel like you've seen everything that you need to see, you can always cancel after that first month. So it helps support us, and it kind of helps pay back my time on doing all these videos. So please support us in that, and head on over there to see the rest of the videos in this series. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the mother plant and how we get this process started. So my yard, it's about summer. It's just about to be August here in Central Florida, 2024. And if you look up there, you can see that everything is just exploding because of the warm weather and the frequent Florida summer rains. And so everything is just everywhere, and it's almost impossible for me to keep up with it all and stay in the business and everything. So everything is a little wild looking. I really like this firebush being here in the corner though. It's kind of serves as a corner piece for this entire front Florida native garden that has some edibles mixed in as well. This plant here has a vine growing through it, and many would immediately think that the vine growing through it is probably a weed, but actually this planting was purposeful. And this is a little bit of extra knowledge that doesn't have anything to do with rooting or cloning native firebush, but this is actually a corky stem passion vine, and it hosts two awesome butterflies, the Gulf fritillary butterfly and the zebra longwing butterfly. They both host on this plant, so you would see caterpillars munching on this thing. And so basically, by allowing this corky stem passion vine to grow up and through and intermixed in the firebush, not only am I attracting butterflies to a host plant, but I'm also giving those adult butterflies a much needed nectar source through the firebush flowers. And since firebush is in fact a bush, it also gives the caterpillars some unique places to hide. It gives them some protection with all the leaves, and the stems actually, in theory, if they wanted to stay this close, would provide them with a good place to create their chrysalis. And the adult butterflies, not only are they coming here to take a drink of nectar, but they also have the ability to kind of perch and hide out in the shade, or just for some stability on the stronger, more dense branches of the firebush. So it basically incorporates all the things that we really like to include in a butterfly garden, all in just 2 plants. The only thing that we're really missing is the water source. So that's some free information there that I just felt like I had to share, since you can see such a really good example of these 2 plants intermixed. So what we're gonna do as far as getting back to actual propagation of this plant is we're gonna take some cuttings, and because this plant is not very big right now, we're gonna be a little bit limited on the number of cuttings that we take for each method that we're trying to do. So when I'm taking cuttings of firebush, I really like to try and do it as if I'm trying to tactfully prune the plant. So whatever shape you want your firebush to be, you know, let the pruning of that firebush give you your cutting. So, you know, if I only wanted it to be a couple feet tall, I would try and cut it and prune it back to that size, but I would be a little bit more careful and specific about where I cut. You know, maybe instead of cutting here to trim this back, you know, if I want a healthy cutting, I need to cut underneath the leaf node. So instead of cutting down here, I would cut here, and now this becomes a whole cutting that I can use for propagation. And then I could trim that down if I didn't like the way that it looked with pruning there. So basically, what I'm trying to suggest is that you can be a little bit strategic in pruning, and it'll give you a whole bunch of cuttings. If you're not worried about any of that, what you are looking for is about 6 inches of stem growth. And I find for the native firebush that the woodier you can get while it's still kind of like a green growth, the better success you'll have at rooting. So any of the more delicate, like very new, not very sturdy looking growth, it doesn't root as well as something like this growth here. So you can see that this is a lot sturdier, it's a lot thicker, and this just tends to have a much better chance of surviving the rooting process over the smaller growths. So in this area here, I probably wouldn't take any cuttings unless I was willing to go further down. So I'm probably, you know, I don't want it to get too short, so I'm probably not going to take cuttings from there. Over here I have some good looking growth. I'll probably take cuttings from there, and then in the back that you can't really see. While I have you guys, I want to go ahead and point out this caterpillar here on the back side of this leaf. This is a Gulf fritillary caterpillar hanging out here. So I could tell that something was munching because those corky stem passion vine leaves are very clearly being munched on by somebody. Okay, so I think that's enough talking about the plant itself. And so the next thing we'll do is I'll go ahead and start taking some cuttings, and then we'll transition into how we prepare the cuttings for the different mediums we're going to try and get them to root in. So let's go ahead and switch over to that. All right. So I've got several different cuttings, and I've brought them back to the back porch so I can get them ready for basically going to whatever medium we're going to use for them. And you can see I still have all the leaves on and really haven't cleaned them up just yet because I wanted to show you guys how I do that. While I was gathering these up, I did decide that instead of doing cuttings directly into the ground, what we're going to do is we're going to swap that out with just a cup of water. So basically seeing if these will root in just a solo cup of water, because I am 99.9% sure that these are not going to root directly into the ground. I've tried, and it's just so dang hot out here, so I don't want to waste the cuttings on something that I know is going to fail. So instead we're going to try a solo cup of water that I'll change out every couple of days, and we'll see if we can get them to root in something as simple as that. Another thing I wanted to bring up is that there are a bunch of ants crawling around the firebush, and I'm inspecting the underside of these leaves. And I don't know if the camera is going to pick them up because they're really, really small, but it looks like we're getting some aphids on this firebush plant. So I don't think it's going to throw off our little propagation station experiment here too much, but it is something to bring up that it might affect the results slightly. So I'm going to do my best to clean these up and make sure that they look super healthy before putting them in their medium. But just know that there might be some negative impacts because this plant already has been under a little bit of stress. We've also got a butterfly egg on that leaf there. So I'll make sure I return that leaf back to the main plant so that it can grow up and feed. So anyways, I just wanted to talk about that real quick. So when I'm looking at making a cutting, this one's probably going to be the easiest demonstration. I like to make all my cuts off of the mother plant below the leaf node because that's where I want the cutting to start anyway. And it just, to me, it expedites things if I'm already making that cut off the plant there. Now, like I was saying before, if you're trying to achieve a certain height of the mother plant, maybe you have to cut somewhere up there originally. But that means now, when you thought your cutting might be like that big, but you really need to bring that cut back up to just below the leaf node. So then if you were to have cut here, now you're really going to end up with a cutting only about that size. So, think about that when you're going to make your cut. Again, I like to have them, this is probably a little bit, longer than 6 inches, but 6 inches to me is kind of like the sweet spot as far as cuttings go. A little bit shorter than that, and you have to really be watching your water levels if they're in the hydroponic cloner, and anything longer than that, and I feel like the energy demand for all the tissue is too high for them to set off the roots. Now, every species of plant is going to be different. Some are super easy and some are very finicky. So if you have a plant that is really, really easy to root, it might not matter how, tall, new, old, where the cut even is, but fire plant is not super difficult, but it's not super easy. So we got to try and make these as good as we can. So we're gonna make that first cut under a leaf node. As you can tell, I've got one already cut there. And the next thing we got to do is we got to trim off any leaves that are this far down. I typically like to only have 2 leaves on each cutting, or no leaves, or 1 leaf, I guess. If I have big leaves, like maybe it's a mulberry or another bush or tree that has giant leaves on it, what I'll end up doing is I will take my shears and I'll cut it in half and leave it. So that way we still have some photosynthesis happening on the leaf, but it's not a ton where it's going to eat up a lot of the energy it needs to make roots. So as you can tell, another energy sucker on this plant is the flowers. So we go ahead and remove those too. And so this is what we're left with. Like I said, sometimes it can be 2 leaves, no leaves, 1 leaf, but I wanted to demonstrate cutting a leaf in half. And so that's what this one is going to look like. So at that point, I just put it over here in my cutting pile, and all this stuff that dropped on the table, I'll just let it lay until we're done, and then I'll probably just end up composting it. So for the next cutting, there's another butterfly egg. So let me go and identify that really quick so I can make sure it actually makes it back into near the original mother plant. So again, on this one, we're gonna make a cut as close to the main stem as possible to remove all of these unwanted leaves. And again, we're removing these leaves because they are going to require energy. Even though they're making energy, they're requiring energy, and we don't have any nutrients coming up from any roots. So we're trying to lower the energy demand of this part of the plant. so that I can focus on root growth down here. And without digging too much into the science, the reason that we're cutting below a leaf node is that all the biologists out there have found that the most, or let me see how to phrase this. So the area on a plant that has the most unspecialized cells, meaning cells that can kind of become whatever, is around a leaf node. So you have cells that are there that can choose to become, maybe new plant material, like another leaf or a stem, or maybe even becoming a flower. But if the conditions are right, they can also turn into roots. So that is why we want our cut to be close to there, because we want that to signal the plant that this is the new bottom of the plant, and this is where it needs to begin growing from. Sometimes when I put these in the hydroponic cloner, I'll get roots here and I'll get roots there if this was close to the water. So you will potentially see roots develop in more than one leaf node area if the conditions are right next to that one as well. Still have some pretty big leaves on here, so I'm going to go ahead and cut those. And then we'll leave this one with 2. All right, so I've already made 3 cuttings, kind of talked to you guys about how I do it and which ways I prefer to do it. And I'm pretty sure that you guys get the gist of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to spare you guys watching me and listening to me go through these next cuttings. And I'm just going to go ahead and get them all ready. And then I'll turn the camera back on when we're going to put them in their respective mediums and kind of hit over a few talking points over each different type. So talk to you guys in just a few minutes. All right, guys. So as you can see over here to the right, I have all my cuttings all done. And then I have my pile of all my trimmings here in the middle. The great things about leafy greens, or a great thing about leafy greens, is when you go to propagate them, this would all be edible and be able to go into the kitchen. Unfortunately for the firebush, that's not the case. So we talked about the different methods. Now I'm going to have to move this cup really carefully because the drainage hole in the bottom is already leaking sand, which should be a consideration for you when using playground sand as a medium. Is how do you keep the sand in your container but also allow water to drain? If you're doing these indoors, maybe you have a grow light or something like that, having a drainage hole isn't, a huge concern, or at least it shouldn't be if you're careful about how much moisture you're allowing to get into the medium. I do all of these outside. I try and do them underneath a porch, but there is some rain because of how close to the edge of that porch roof that I have to put the plants in order to get sunlight. There is a chance that the rain will get blown by the wind into them. So I put drainage holes in mine, and this one over here, the hole is just about perfect in size, which is why it is not leaking sand, and this one was probably just a little too big. So can't win them all, but I just wanted to point that out. So for the sand, this is really easy, not a whole lot to it. So I'll take 2 cuttings, let's say I'll do this one, and I'm just going to push them down at least, about an inch into the sand, and then making sure that the soil, well, in this case, the sand is compacted enough just to keep the cutting upright. And then I'll do the same thing with the other one I've just randomly chosen for the sand. There's a lot of people out there that suggest not just shoving the cutting down into the medium because they think that the medium will, damage the end of your cutting. And I haven't really noticed a correlation of cuttings not being successful and a damaged stem. If anything, if this is ever damaged, it's usually because it had too much water and starts getting diseased or getting a mold or something on it, especially in the cloner or in cups of water. If you're not changing that water regularly, or maybe it's really hot outside and So I really haven't noticed anything as I've been doing this for several years of me just shoving it down have any effect on the cutting. So moving on, we're gonna go into the potting soil next, and this is just potting soil that is sold under the name of a local nursery. I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not even sure where they get it from. They give a free bag of it when you buy some of their larger fruit trees and stuff. So I've just gotten enough of it to where it's around, it's available, and it's worked out just fine for me. So I use it for the cuttings. It's definitely got pretty decent drainage. Again, we want to keep this medium moist, but we also need for it to retain we need for it to be able to drain as well, because too much of anything is a bad thing, right? So too much moisture is a bad thing. Not enough moisture is also a bad thing. So this soil mix, whatever it is, it has worked out just fine. I'm sure you could make your own using some organic compost and mixing in some playground sand, maybe some small rocks, things like that, pieces of mulch, whatever you want to do, and make just as good. I'm not sure if it would be cheaper, but maybe just as good. So anyway, let me get back on topic here. So same thing for the cuttings that are going into the potting soil. So about an inch down, making sure that that bottom leaf node is covered really well. And I'll use this one for same thing over there, and that'll leave us with 2 for the cloner and 2 for the cup of just regular old sink water. So I'm going to turn the camera off again, and we'll move over to the cloning station, and that'll be where the cups go as well. And I'll flip the camera back on and show you guys what that looks like. Alright guys, so this is basically my cloning station for the hydroponics and cups of water. Like I said, it's on the side of my house. I've got a porch line, and that's covered by a roof, and this is sitting basically right on the edge. It's pretty much a mess. It's always a mess because the turnover is so high on doing cuttings and then moving new ones in, and of course I've got a whole bunch of plants that I pick up to begin making cuttings of. So it's just a constant battle of keeping this space clean, but we're gonna go ahead and show you guys what cloners I use, at least the hydroponic cloners, and how I get them set up. So we'll start by doing the easiest part of this whole conversation, which is putting the 2 cuttings that are going to be going in the cup of water. So like I said, this is pretty self-explanatory. Regular hose water is going to be just fine, and now I will put it with the other Firebush cuttings there. So one fell down here, and we'll move on to talking about the hydroponic cloner. So this is the big guy that I have, the smaller one up there. During the summer, it's really hard to keep the hydroponic cloner clean and free from like mold and algae and all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can see a little bit right there, and I have just cleaned this a couple days ago. So that's one of the hardest parts about using hydroponics, especially outdoors in a Central Florida summer. So it requires constant water changes, cleaning out everything. These blue little foam pads get all gross if they're constantly wet. So one of the ways that I have found that has reduced the overall, dirtying or algae growth on the blue foam plant holders and this whole lid in general is to actually keep the water level inside lower than what they recommend. I think they have like a fill line that wants you to have the water level up basically within an inch of the top. But what that does is, as the aerators move the water and the water pump moves the water, it keeps these foam holders consistently wet. Like you can see these in the middle are, as compared to these on the ends. And with them being constantly moist and hot like they are in the summer, that's just the breeding ground for all the different, you know, potential diseases that are gonna negatively impact your clones, or your cuttings, excuse me. So that's one of the ways that I combat it in the summers. In the winters, I really don't have any issues at all. So anyway, that's enough about that. Let's go ahead and we'll put our 2 Firebush cuttings in the cloner. So because my water level is low, I gotta really give a lot more plant to go beneath my foam holder. And yeah, so if you remember what I was talking about earlier, if you weren't making a very strategic cut off of your mother plant, you could end up with not a whole lot of plant material above the foam plant holder. And I just don't see cuttings do really well when there's not enough plant material above the foam holder. As you can tell with all these other cuttings that are to the left, they all have a decent amount of plant material above the foam, and then of course they have to have enough below to get down to that water level. So you can kind of see once I put this in, because I don't have any foam holders here, I can tell that yes, that plant, the bottom is in the water level. So another thing that you can do, I don't really do it a whole lot anymore, is you can actually put rooting hormone in your water down here, and that will help the roots get started. I haven't really seen that adding rooting hormone is absolutely necessary. It's just another cost in this process. So I stopped doing that a few months ago. I will do rooting hormone sometimes if I'm going directly into potting soil for the plants that are kind of difficult to get rooted, but we're not doing that in this series, so I didn't get to show you guys that. But anyway, that's pretty much it as far as getting plants into the cloner. Keeping it clean is super important. As certain leaves begin to die, because they will, you know, these plants are still going to go through some decent stress, so you know you're going to get some leaf drop. You know, cleaning that up around the plants, making sure that if they fall in the water that you're cleaning that up as well, because they you know, that will just become more dirt inside there, that and plant breakdown turns into a decomposition process and just kind of dirties the water. So we try and clean that out as well. Another good reason to try and limit the number of leaves on the plant. So anyway, that's pretty much it for this video, for the first video of this series. You know, we're gonna do updates every few days. Probably it's gonna be closer to every week. If there has been you know, some significant changes, like maybe the first time I see roots, if it's before, you know, the scheduled update would be, I'll probably do an extra video then. If something bad happens, I might do an extra video then, but we're gonna try and stay on the, you know, maybe once a week track, or once every 2 weeks if nothing's happening. So make sure that you go over to the website and go to the Propagation Station Forum and that thread, and become a monthly subscriber so that you can see all of our Propagation Station videos. Thanks for supporting us, guys. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll do my best to answer anything I can. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you in the next update. Bye.